Hey everybody, it's Gary Lucas. It's 3 p.m. here in New York City on Saturday, October 17th, and bless Caroline because she ran out and got me a cup of coffee. Here's to you guys. My energy levels jump all over the place these days because I'm really not getting enough sleep. I'm waiting for the sleep apnea machine to arrive to check it out, but something tells me that's not going to do it either. I don't know. But the suspense is killing me, but in the meantime, I'm here to play for you. A little bit of a thing called The Opener of the Way that was on a Tzaddik Records album I did called Street of Lost Brothers. The title actually derived from an excellent Czech writer, a collection of his short stories, a guy named Arnošt Lustig. Really excellent, not very well known. He died a few years ago. Very good writer, a cosmopolitan writer. He was the editor of Czech Playboy magazine, I found out, among other things, and there's a documentary about him and his work on YouTube, but check it out. Lustig, Arnost, Arnost, Lustig, and I picked up that collection quite by accident. Sometimes titles are enough to grab me, to purchase a book. And I like the title Street of Lost Brothers. And it fit in nicely some years later with this album I did for John Zorn's Tzaddik Records label. Kind of a concept album on his Radical Jewish Culture series. I did 2 for him. Check them out. I mean, they're available. I don't know if they're on Spotify. I don't know if he did an arrangement with them. But I have them, as I have all of my albums autographed and available for your perusal at GaryLucas.com. And I got in a few new things this week after combing warehouses all over the world. It's like the J. Peterman catalog here. I found in darkest Soviet Union a couple of copies of my Rishteh album that I made with Najma Akhtar This thing is available online through OK Music, but you should see this original packaging. It's a thing of beauty and a joy forever. It came out on Harmonia Mundi World Village label in 2008 and made #1 on the world charts. I think it's one of the best things I ever did, but it wasn't that easy to get shows, although we played a great show on the main stage at night in prime time at the WOMAD Festival in the Canary Islands, just as a trio. Myself, Najma on vocals, and Surish Manji on tabla. And we got a thunderous ovation at the end. And we thought it would open some doors up, but outside of getting some clips, which are posted on Vimeo, if you care to check them out, we got no more on the WOMAD circuit. Go figure, I don't know. But I know also an agent that I worked with at the time in Germany was booking a lot of the so-called downtown players, of which I'm sometimes numbered among, said, I don't really know who this would be popular to except for Indian people, which I thought was an incredibly short-sighted remark. And I was like, hey, have you ever heard acoustic Led Zeppelin, for instance, which was, one of the influences that went into at least the guitar parts on that record. I mean, I gotta say, whatever you think about Jimmy Page vis-a-vis appropriations of other music or guitarists, as a songwriter, I think he's really a spectacular example of a great songwriter in terms of he was very open to world music influences and all sorts of influences, and really knew how to string those riffs together, whether or not, he actually took Randy California's riff from Taurus. Now they just, won that lawsuit about Stairway to Heaven. Not to digress a little bit, but I just had to say. Actually, I grew up with the Taurus album, and then I got the Zeppelin album. I never made the connection. But when the lawsuit came up, I went and AP'd the intro to Taurus, which is a Randy California instrumental, and then, of course, the well-known intro to Stairway to Heaven. And I said, yeah, that's where he got that. That's pretty obvious to me. I mean, as a guitarist, the voicings and the finger picking are identical. I mean, yes, this kind of descending scale is prevalent in all sorts of music, but that particular intro is almost, I mean, that's where it comes from in my book. But whether or not that was grounds for a plagiarism suit is kind of ropey, because it only, it's like a real short sample of that song. And certainly they were doing Fresh Garbage, Led Zeppelin, in their early shows in America, so they knew that album. That is clear to me. But anyway, the whole trick of this thing is trying to make it new. And they certainly did that. But here's something I tried to make new, and this is Chinese music from the 30s, put in a blender and done in a kind of folky Americana style. That's a beautiful song called The Wall, recorded by Bai Kwong, who is one of the two primary Shanghai divas that I covered on an album called The Edge of Heaven, Gary Lucas Plays Mid-Century Chinese Pop. And it came out on 9/11, as did Bob Dylan's Love and Theft. And I was in Paris on that particular day to promote the record. And I got back to my hotel after lunch, and I got a call from a friend who was frantic, who said, Gary, turn on the TV in the hotel room. World Trade Center just collapsed. And I remember watching that grim spectacle, and a lot of my French friends came over. It was like sitting Shiva, for New York City at that point. And anyway, I couldn't go back. I did manage to speak with Caroline on the phone before they cut the phone service, which stayed dead for a while, and she was okay, so that was good. And she'd heard about it through her mom in London who'd called her. So that was a really weird period. I had, luckily enough, some other gigs to fulfill on this tour, so I remember playing in Belgium and Switzerland and Holland until it was time to fly home about 3 weeks later, and got off the plane at JFK, and the stench of burnt plastic, that's the smell I remember primarily, permeated the air. And there was sort of this haze over Manhattan, and getting into Manhattan from JFK, police checkpoints everywhere and barricades, and just atrocious. But anyway, that record did very well, and it got a lot of airplay starting in France on France Inter and awards over there, and then it spread slowly but surely all over the world, and I love this music. I have two new ones in the can with the great mainland Chinese singer Feifei Yang. And there's one track, it's a cover of Dylan's All Along the Watchtower that we did in Mandarin Chinese, her translation, that'll knock your socks off. And that is on my forthcoming album, The Essential Gary Lucas, which is out January 29th on Knitting Factory label. I'm very excited about it. It actually got a few advance reviews because the release date got bumped a couple of times due to the pandemic. I mean, I really wanted to have gigs surrounding it to really give it a shot in promotion-wise. And so it's going to come out hell or high water anyway now. I'm not going to sit on it any longer. But watch for that. And I'm very excited because Tuesday night I'm flying to the Netherlands, which is the country that first really took to my music in a big way, going back to about 1990. And that's an interesting story, how that kind of started. I mean, I began doing solo concerts at the Knitting Factory here in New York, basically on a dare, right, to impress a girl who put me up to the challenge. And, some friends of mine who I'd produced, actually, Tim Byrne and Peter Gordon, these downtown saxophonists, jazz guys, they had played there, so I knew the joint. And then I met Michael Dorff, who ran it. And he said, Beefheart's guitarist. Okay, yeah, we give you a slot here. So I did this show in June of 1988, and I didn't know what was going to happen. It was like, see what happens. I worked really hard to assemble a repertoire. And lo and behold, they had a block snaking out the club around the block. People wanted to hear this, and I got several ovations at the end of my set. And then they handed me $600 off the door from the tip jar. And I was like, and I came back, I told Caroline, who wasn't there, what happened, and I said, you know what, I should have been doing this a long time ago, but I'm going to hit it as hard as I can right now, music. I really feel, I was empowered by the whole thing. So, and I'm going to play my way out of my day job, which I did. I had this stultifying day job in the creative services department of CBS Records, writing ads, toiling in the vineyards over hot IBM Selectric for many years too long. And anyway, So this freed me from the prison of the corporation, what my sister described as a velvet coffin. I mean, it was comfortable in there, but there's so much more going on in the world. So all that is to say, I'm returning to Holland because, some Dutch fans heard about me and saw me play at the Knitting Factory and went back and got all excited and said, Gary should be playing in the Netherlands because they got a huge Beefheart fan base. I mean, I think that was the main attraction back then, was my connection to Don Van Vliet. And so they dug up a promoter who contacted me, and I came over and did a series of shows. And my whole first album, Skeleton at the Feast, is primarily a compilation of high points of the early shows. One at the Groningen Jazz Marathon in Northern Holland, and the rest of it at the Bimhuis, which is sort of their premier jazz club and new music joint. So I'm coming back to play in Eindhoven. I love Eindhoven. Eindhoven is where Philips Corporation is located. And I have a real deep musical connection there because one of the records I love to death was made in Eindhoven by two Dutch madmen, a guy named Tom Dissevelt and another guy, Dick Rijmakers, who went under a pseudonym Kid Balton. And in 58, 59, they came out with a record. In America, it was called Electronic Music. And it's also been titled Song of the Second Moon. And it changed my life. I went into Onondaga Music in Syracuse, where I grew up, one day and said, I'd like to get some really weird horror movie music. I'm into horror films. And they said, we don't have that, but we have this, so check this out. So I bought it, without hearing it, just because the cover was so cool. It was an abstract painting, I think, by Carol Appel. And I loved the sounds on it. And my best friend at the time, Walter Horn, and I listened to this record extensively and were really turned on by what was going on. And basically, these two guys got a job for a year and a half, I think, almost 2 years, to try and concoct electronic music in the Philips laboratory. I guess the president of Philips thought maybe it might sweep the world if they could hit on a pop formula incorporating tape loops and basically early sampling with tape recorders. It was all done by, recording natural sounds a lot and then speeding or slowing the tapes up, manipulating the tapes and snipping the tapes and layering the tapes. A very laborious process which can be done at a few flips of a computer key these days, but I'm kind of old-fashioned, and I love the results they got on this record, and as did David Bowie, because I routinely put it on my top 10 albums list, normally do. He did a list for Vanity Fair, and by God, this album is on that list. So check it out, but, anyway, so Eindhoven is where Philips Labs are, and at the Eindhoven Muziekgebouw, which is a beautiful art center there, I'm doing 2 nights, one on Halloween with the Spanish language Dracula, my live score, accompanying this film. I began doing it in the Havana Film Festival. In 2009, I went down there. That was a trip. I did it at the New York Film Festival at Lincoln Center in 2010. I've done it at film festivals, jazz festivals, all sorts of horror festivals for years, and also normal venues, but some abnormal, like on 125th Street, there's a beautiful old Art Deco theater. Actually, it's 175th Street in Harlem, called the United Palace Theater. One of the original, what are known as Wonder Palaces in America. There were about 8 of these film palaces constructed in the late 20s that are just cathedral-like and ornamental. Beautiful friezes on the walls of all sorts of, Greco-Roman classical imagery and astrological symbols and alchemical symbols and what have you. Just gorgeous theater. It's also the palace that Reverend Ike and his quasi-religion are situated on the weekdays. He's dead now, but he was always a trip to hear on the radio. And anyway, I got booked in there about 5 years ago and had actually a couple of performances, one with Frankenstein. I do a score for that. Both of those films have only dialogue on the soundtrack. they couldn't afford an orchestra in those days or a composer due to the Depression, which was raging, and no one really thought this horror stuff was going to sell. Now, Last Laugh is on everybody in Hollywood because what is the most single popular genre worldwide? Horror and science fiction, but mainly horror. And myself, I don't really partake of it too much anymore, not the new stuff, because it's all retreads and scrambled mythologies. And I mean, there's only so many stories, as someone once pointed out. And I have very good pattern recognition, so a lot of this is just like, to me, kind of turgid to sit through because I'm always identifying the source material. But in any case, it's popular, and I like to reanimate these old classic films. So I'm doing that on Halloween, and then on November 1st, in the same place, I'm doing a new duo I'm developing with a great Dutch jazz bass virtuoso and a great singer, Peter Willems, a young guy who trekked all the way from Maastricht in southern Holland, to Nick Voldebrecht's jazz club when I was on there last year playing Code de Kloot's co-live show. Very famous jazz club in Leyden, I think it is, not far from Amsterdam. And he took the train journey of at least an hour and a half or so to come and hear me. And we've been working, collaborating, and we're really excited about making this new record together as well while I'm over there. So I think there are going to be performances with social distancing, but for sure they're going to record and live stream these things to get around the pandemic. So yeah, I'm going on Tuesday, and very excited about that. So I will interrupt the normal schedule of these shows, I think, for at least 3 weeks, but I'll keep you posted. I'd like to keep doing at least twice a week to play for you. And okay, let's see what we got here. Yeah, she's a rainbow, is she not now? This is a damn good book. Wild Thing. It's a new biography of Jimi Hendrix. It's only out in the UK right now. What a beautiful cover, even backwards. I've never seen that chap before. It's by Philip Norman, who's written quite a few music biographies. I think he wrote a famous one on the Beatles I read called A Cellar Full of Noise, if I'm not mistaken. I got to check that, but it's very well written, albeit it's full of typos. I don't know who they're employing in these British publishing companies, but they really ought to look twice. There's some embarrassing ones there because they talk about Arthur Lee at one point and how he was a good friend of Jimmy's going way back. The great Arthur Lee of the band Love. And suddenly his name is morphed to Albert Lee, who's an excellent guitarist who was in Heads, Hands, and Feet and played with a lot of people. And that remains Albert Lee for a few pages too, so they need to fix that in the next edition. But it's good, and I would also recommend you, if you like Jimi Hendrix, to a fantastic book by my friend Charles Shar Murray, who's on Facebook, who's a great writer and one of the granddaddies of the whole colorful, let's say, English rock writing scene that really exploded around the mid-'70s. It really got going. I met him actually in '73 on my first trip to London. I was there after playing the electric guitar in Leonard Bernstein's Mass with the Yale Symphony Orchestra. I decided to go check out this United Kingdom and took a trip to London and booked myself in a little squalid basement hotel room near Euston Station in the Bloomsbury area near the British Museum. But, I got out and about as much as possible. And the first night I was there, I went down to Leicester Square all by my lonesome on the tube to see this new film called A Film About Jimi Hendrix that Joe Boyd, who later I met and became friendly with, produced for Warner Brothers. And Jimmy had recently died a year or so earlier. And it's a great film. And I never did get to see him, unfortunately, because when he played my hometown of Syracuse at the War Memorial, which was the very day he got busted for possession of heroin at the Canadian border, coming to fly back to play this gig in Syracuse, me and my buddies did not have enough nickels and dimes to scrape up for a ticket because we'd blown it all on marijuana. Anyway, here I'm going to wrap it up. But check out Charles's book, Crosstown Traffic. It's a great read and astute commentary on all of the connections of Jimmy with soul and R&B music and world music and like that. Okay, so I'm probably not going to be here on Tuesday because I'm flying that day in the afternoon, but I will do my best to play for you on Thursday. Just keep watching the skies. And until then, I remain Gary Lucas. I love you guys for tuning in, okay? And be safe. Wear that mask. Okay, bye-bye.